All right, we are back for round 2 of filming because in round 1 someone didn't realize that they weren't recording. That someone is me. So I removed the tape that I had put on so far and do a fresh slate. Second round of filming. Here we go. And you know what? I'm going to check right now that we are indeed filming. The next project I'm going to do is I'm going to take this old record player, which I found at a thrift store. I plugged it in and tried it, but unfortunately it doesn't seem to be working, which was a bummer because I really wanted to give it a spin, which is fine because that's part of the upcycling project, is taking electronics that no longer work and give them a new purpose. I know that I want to paint it, or I'll use this as a base and then I'll glue on some florals and some other decorations on top. And then I will keep this lid part off. It's pretty scratched up unless I painted it, which might seem a bit weird. So I'll probably just leave it. That's my general plan, but sometimes I honestly just, I wing it, depending on how things turn out. I like to kind of visualize what it's going to look like, but you know, sometimes it doesn't always end up looking like how you envision it in your mind. So it's good to be able to adapt and improvise on the fly.
So let's go through some of the materials you need for this project. First up, you're just going to need a general cleaner. If your piece is really dirty, you might want to look at a TSP cleaner or something a little more heavy duty. And if you have to take apart anything on your project, you're going to want a screwdriver or a drill. If you have anything that you're going to need to tape off that is either oddly shaped or intricate, I would suggest getting a little blade like this. Just makes it a lot easier to cut the tape. And speaking of tape, you are obviously going to need some of that. This is a higher quality tape that I usually only save for projects like this that I don't want any bleed through with painting. This is the regular adhesion. I would also suggest a delicate adhesion as well. And then you'll just want some containers to place your paint in. And then depending on what type of design you want to do, I would recommend just a variety pack of the artist brushes. You also may not even need these if you're just planning on spray painting it and keeping it a couple different colors with no actual design. So first up for the paint, I have a spray-on primer here. So this is going to adhere to the plastic to allow me to put the other paint over top. And then I just got some spray paint in gold and a matte black. And then here I just have some acrylic paints. And then lastly, I just have a sealer, and this one is in a matte finish. Now, before I have anyone coming for me for ruining this record player, I did have a friend look at it who loves tinkering with this kind of stuff, and even they said it was beyond repair for them. So ultimately decided, as much as I would have loved to restore it and have it working, this was a good alternative to save it from the landfill. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of this cord. Because it's no longer working, there's no reason to have the cord. So I'm just going to open up the back here. There's 4 screws, pop open the panel, and then cut the plug and take it out. And the next step is obviously giving it a good clean. I'm sure this record player has seen some things in its day. I'm just taking off all the little knobs that I'm going to be spray painting gold. It's going to make it easier, one, to clean it right now, and then also to spray paint it. It is actually pretty clean. However, there is still some dirt and grime just kind of built up in the corners and the crevices. So we're going to do our best to clean all that stuff out. I just used a all-purpose cleaner for this, but if you're needing a heavy-duty cleaning product, I would recommend using a TSB cleaner. And then once you've managed to get it sparkling clean again, you're just going to want to let it dry before you move on to the next step. So now we're going to start prepping our surface for primer. Since it is made out of plastic, we are going to need a primer that is going to adhere to that surface. There are a lot of types of paints that won't, so you're going to need that primer as your base so that you can apply any type of paint you want on top of that. If you don't use the primer first, you may find that your paint will start peeling over time or even immediately. So this is an important step. So as you can see, I'm just taping off this little control panel box. I'm not 100% sure what I want to do with it yet. I want to kind of see what it's going to look like once the rest of the record player is painted. The label is quite dated and has a little bit of a yellow tint to it. I do have the option of spray painting over top of it. However, if I do that, I will lose the text information on it. But since it's not a functioning record player, I don't really see that as a problem. And I could always go back after and add my own little control panel text. And now I'm just going to go ahead and tape up the arm and one of these knobs here. Both of these I'm going to spray paint gold, and with the brand that I have, you don't actually need to have a primer first, so you can apply it just directly to the plastic. And as for the black part underneath, I won't be using the white primer for that. I'll use a black primer and then a black spray paint. However, I don't need to bother taping that up, as I'll just be careful when I'm spraying the white, and any overspray I do get on the black, it doesn't really matter because I'll be spray painting that black afterwards anyway. So now we're all set to start priming our piece. The first thing you're going to want to do is find a place that you can paint without creating too much of a mess. Especially if you're using spray paint, you just want to make sure that you don't get overspray on anything. So I just have some leftover poly that I'm going to lay out to help protect the grass. Although as you can see, it's pretty dead anyway. And then I'm just going to use this old shoebox to help prop up the record player as I paint it, so I can really get it from all different angles. So here it is all set up. So this is probably going to need a couple coats of primer. My advice is it's better to work in thinner layers and let them dry and build it up versus going really heavy on one coat. When you do this, you have a way higher chance of getting drips or just excess amount of paint. And also make sure to continuously shake the can as you're working. So here's that first layer dried. As you can see, it's not 100% solid coverage, but that's why we're going to go in with the second coat here. Now, I know I said earlier that I was not going to be using the lid. However, I figured it was better to get this all primed out just in case I decided I did want to paint it. So I'm going to get this all primed out as well. So I did go through a third time and just kind of spot primed a couple places that were looking a little patchy still. So I've let it dry out here for a couple hours, so I think it's ready to bring it inside. I'm also not too worried about the coverage in that center part there because I am going to put that rubber mat over top, so actually it's going to be covering it anyway. So now that the primer is all dry, we're going to start prepping for the actual paint. Now, because we are going to be using multiple colors, we're going to have to section off certain parts of it by using tape and poly. So we're basically just covering everything that we've just primed in the white. And then here, as you can see, I'm just cutting little slits into the top to bring out the arm and then that one knob on top so that I can spray those ones gold. And then here I'm just taping off where the cream is going to meet the black. Sometimes laying a straight line with the poly as well, it can be tricky. So what I normally do is just lay the piece of tape down first and I make sure that's nice and straight. And then I'll attach another piece of tape with the poly over top of that. So now we finally get to start adding some color. The first thing that I'm going to paint is going to be the black underside. So I would suggest working the same way that you did with the primer. So that's just going to be working in thin layers and building up that color. So let the black sit for a few hours just to make sure that it was fully dry before I flipped it over. And then I went and grabbed those knobs that I pulled off earlier. I gave them a good clean as well, let them dry, and now I've just got them laid out. I would recommend propping them up on something as well, just so you can get underneath and get it again from all angles. I ended up doing a few coats on these just to make sure that I had solid coverage, and then I make sure to let them dry fully before I pick them up to move them. And next we're going to paint the mat. I covered the center part with tape because that is actually going to be going gold. I'm going to use the same spray paint that I used for the bottom of the record player, which is just a matte black. And while I had the black spray paint out, I ended up deciding to spray that inside part of the control panel. I was actually able to pop it right out of the box, which was nice, so I didn't have to retape the entire record player again just to spray that. So I'm just going to spray that twice and give it some good coverage. Now we're going to get started on painting the body of the record player. So before starting, I did a couple samples of some colors that I had in mind. I ultimately decided to do a cream and sage green swirl pattern. Just try to make it look a little fun, but also keep that retro vibe. So I'm just beginning to apply that cream color. I figured I was going to have that as my base and then do the green swirls afterwards. So here I'm just doing the final swirls on my little pattern. If you don't feel comfortable freehanding it, you can always sketch it out with a pencil before. Or another idea as well is if you have a vinyl cutter machine, you could also create a stencil to put on there as well. Also, if you are a little bit of a messy painter, I would suggest taping up everything that you had already previously painted, like the gold and the black. If you're going to do this, I would recommend using a delicate tape so you don't pull off all the paint that you just worked so hard to put on. So now that all the painting is done, we're going to start assembling it back together. So I'm going to start by putting those little plates back on for the control panel. And then I'm going to slip all those little knobs back on as well. And then lastly, you're going to put that little rubber mat back on. And I figured since I had the paint out and I'd already primed it, I was going to paint the lid as well. I wasn't sure if I was going to like it with it, but I'd rather have it and not need it than the alternative. All right, and now for the final results. So this is it with the lid on. Unfortunately, it doesn't really like to stay open like it is here. You kind of have to prop it up against the wall to see the full effect. But I think it looks just as cute without the lid like it is here. I'm also really happy with how the colors turned out as well. I was a little unsure what color to pair with the black, gold, and cream. But I think the sage green looks perfect with it. It's a great combination. I just wanted to add a pop of color to the piece, so happy with how that turned out. Although it may not be a working record player, at least it makes for some cool decor. I think it would look great on a bookshelf or on a coffee table or a side table. And as a little reminder, this is what we started with, and this is the finished product. And this is actually the final project in this series. And it was actually a really fun one to end with, so I'm happy about that. And if you've made it here to the final episode of the series, first of all, thank you. And secondly, I hope that you were able to learn a thing or two. And if you didn't learn anything, I at least hope that you were entertained. But in all seriousness, the best outcome that I could possibly hope for with this series is that I was able to inspire or help encourage even a few people on their upcycling or DIY journey. And I will end this series with a little compilation that I hope you find as humorous as I did while I was editing it.
Well, still in focus.
Okay, perfect. Okay. All right, welcome back to it.
Okay, I'll go.
No,
It's fine. So that wraps up
Anyway.
The drive-by.
There are probably a lot of, why can't I say that word?